Yeah, we'll have a general chat in a minute, and it's nice to see everyone. We've got a nice turnout today, so that's good. And Ray's back from Thailand, and Barbara, what were you saying, Barbara?
In the FEPOW magazine, because Ray came and joined us last Christmas for our Christmas lunch, and it was lovely for him to. Oh, hi Martin, for him to come travel all that way to be with us. And so he's got a mention in the actual FEPOW magazine this month. It was too late to go into the last one. Martin was with us in Birmingham the month before, so we had an exciting end to the year last year, which was lovely, and nice to see Martin here again, and maybe Jan will come and wave at us as well.
She's on the lounge at the moment. She's got a broken ankle, broken toe.
Oh no! How did she do that? Wasn't kicking you, was it, Martin?
No, close. No, she had a slip on the stairs, and she's twisted her ankle and broken her toe on the other foot.
Oh, I hope she feels better very soon then. That's miserable.
Yeah, she's hobbling.
Yeah. You're having to do everything then.
What's it like in Australia now? Keith Bettany was saying it's not too bad, Martin.
No, it's not. I mean, I think in South Australia and Western Australia, we're quite lucky that we don't have as many numbers as other people. But yeah, no.
Your wife is behind you. We're not waving to you. We're waving to your wife.
She's heading back to the lounge.
Oh, yeah. You were saying. Go on.
So yeah, things are starting to tighten up quite a lot now. We're very much restricted for travel. Even in our own state, we can't cross boundaries. And they're starting to enforce more lockdown, and people in public places are getting moved on. So yeah, look, I mean, a lot of us now working from home, and you got to do what you got to do, haven't you?
Yeah, Keith was saying something about that a lot of the patients came from a cruiser.
Yes, from cruise ships. Yes. So we've got, I think we've got currently about 8 cruise ships in Australia at the moment that have got varying levels of illness.
Can I have an
We got one. We got a German one in here in Fremantle.
Yes, he can see you.
Oh,
Barbara, Ron. What's going on here then?
How you put up with Bernard? We don't know.
I'm glad you've triggered it. Okay.
Good morning, Ronnie and everybody. Ronnie, if I come on
have we got Keith as well? Sorry, I haven't got everyone. Let me just try and get it.
Keith, Ron?
Sorry?
Come on as Keith now.
So just a minute. Let me just get so we can see everyone, because I can't see everyone at the moment. I'll put it on gallery view.
Gotcha.
Oh, I can see Keith now.
Is that better?
Yeah.
That's better, isn't it? We can see everyone now. Oh, Tim, your mic is off. Let me just see if I can turn your mic on. No, Tim, your mic is off. That isn't my end, Tim. That's your end. Your mic is turned off.
Yeah, I can see it. It's switched off, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't click that, can I?
No, that isn't our end, Tim. That's your end. Try going out and coming in again, Tim, because your mic, we can't hear you.
Sophie's got some guests.
Poor Cass.
Yeah. That's Liam and one of our cats, George, who is perhaps unwilling to participate, let's say, in a lot of activities at the moment. Not just
Ronnie?
meetings.
No.
Ronnie, can I ask you a question? Have I come on as Keith Andrews?
Sorry?
No.
Because when you come in, I think you're still using the app.
Yes, I am. Through my browser.
What you want to do is uninstall the app.
Right.
Okay, You uninstall the app, you go into your apps, uninstall it, and then when you try and come in next time, that will say, do you want to load the app? So you load the app and then you put your name in.
I can see that Matt's come on as you as well. Hi, Matt.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah, well,
what Matt's doing.
I went on this morning and I went in through my browser, which is Safari. It said join meeting, and I had to put the meeting ID in and my name, and then I came in.
Yeah, but they're switching to the browser. The app, rather. They're switching to the app and not the browser. So what you want to do is uninstall the app, and then that will reinstall it. Then you can put your own name in and your password in.
So I have to uninstall it and then reinstall it, yeah?
Yeah, uninstall it, and then when you go in next time, that'll ask you if you want to install it. So you install it, and then you put your own name in.
Okay.
Because it's definitely loading the app which you used to use with my name on it.
Yeah. Okay. No
Okay.
problem. Yeah, I'll give
And
it a
then
try.
you can come in any time and do it. So, any time during the day you can join the meeting, then do it. Can you hear us, Tim?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. It's suddenly just disconnected for some reason.
We've got you now, but that weren't our end. That weren't our end because you weren't crossed out this end. In my
no, it wasn't crossed out my end.
Yeah, but your
Anyway,
mic
can you hear
had
me
stopped
now?
working. You can hear you now, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Must be.
Anyway, so meeting-wise, we're okay. Yeah, that was okay, but I've opened the meeting on Monday for the FEPOW family Facebook members, everyone, not just the charity members. So that's just so people who are by themselves can come in and try and have a chat, so they don't feel so lonely. Okay, so that was Sophie's idea, and we didn't have anyone last week, but hopefully this week we might get some people. Right, starting the meeting. Sad news
got
about
another one.
Oh, who have we got?
Susan Potts, it said on mine.
Let's have a look. We've got telephone number, I think, is Susan Potts. Yeah, let's just do the mic. Yeah, so Susan Potts is on our end. Susan, you're on our end. Again, I've just made your mic so that'll use, but your mic, your end is crossed out. So you want to get your mic on. Anyway,
is that better?
Yeah, that's better. We can hear you now. Yeah.
I sent a Facebook message saying I can't get on.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So yeah, we've got a good meeting today. Yeah. So I'll start at sad news about Dr. William Franklin.
Yep.
Allergies. He did a lot for allergies, and why I mentioned him is because when I got pleurisy, that was more than likely down to me having bad hay fever over the years, and it accumulated, and that's why I got pleurisy. So again, I now take tablets every day for hay fever, and again, it's down to Dr. William Franklin that he did a lot of work in it, so he's helped me as well. Anyway. April's.
Oh, can I just say about Bill Franklin?
Yeah.
Firstly, going back to Keith. Keith had been. I was saying that my father originally enlisted in the Warwickshires because we're Birmingham people, and then was transferred to the Surreys. Ronnie, sorry, Keith. Looking at you there with your name up as Ronnie, Keith. Anyway, Bill Franklin was actually transferred to the Warwickshires, which was interesting. So I was looking a bit more in the book, and he came home on the same ship just by chance as my dad. He came home to Liverpool on the Orduna. In the book, it says that he docked at Liverpool, excuse me, on the 13th of October. Now, I've always believed that my dad docked on the 19th of October, and so I've looked it up. So there is actually an error in the biography, because one of them's wrong. He was on the same ship as my dad, and in the book it says he docked on the 13th. So I need to look that up. But it was interesting that he was in the Warwickshires, same as my dad was to begin with. So I'm actually now going to start going off and looking what the Warwickshires did in World War II, because we never seem to hear about them. I know they weren't in the Far East. I know that.
Warwickshires, if my memory serves me well, there was a bunch of them captured. No, a bunch of them captured at or on the retreat to Dunkirk by the 1st SS Leibstandarte Division. 90 men there were marched behind a barn and executed.
That's it, yes, I've read about that. They threw grenades or something into the barn, and those that didn't die were brought out and shot. Yeah, so I've got that far.
And
so you've inspired me on that, Keith.
And the men still lie buried behind that barn. They are not on the CWGC site. And evidently from somebody who is trying to get the CWGC to reinter them, their attitude was, well, they've been there for this amount of time. We see no reason to move them.
Right.
So,
and talking of that, and I'm sorry I'm going off a bit, but just out of a coincidence, I think I mentioned, maybe just to you, Keith, about in our local churchyard, which we're having to explore local now, aren't we? Because we can't walk far. I came across Commonwealth war graves, so I went back and had a look at them when I went to visit my dad's and his brother's graves. And I found one who had died in Jakarta on the 8th of August, 1945, which was very sad. So he's buried out there. But that was a coincidence. And that coincidence led on to other things too. And I found that somebody who I'd been a bridesmaid for, they've got that one of their sons had got a war grave. So that had been an interesting start to my week, in a week where we've all been changing our lives.
Yep.
So sorry to bore you with that, but that's my catching up on that.
Yeah, Barbara, I've got the 19th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I've always known it as the 19th.
Yeah, I've got the 19th.
Yeah, which only came out last year. It says the 13th.
Yeah. No, they were in Colombo on the 10th.
Yeah.
And Ceylon, so I mean the 13th is too near.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so the 19th would be about right.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. Yeah. Nice to see Ray again.
Yeah.
And Ray has just come back from Thailand, so we'd like to hear what you've done in Thailand, Ray.
Plan my escape.
Yeah.
Well, just to sort of give you a little bit of background, my wife is a Thai lady, for those who don't know, and she came over for Christmas to England, and we went back to Thailand together in the middle of February, just before all of this coronavirus started to get as serious as it is today. Our plan really was to spend a couple of weeks in the house to finalise the repairs to the house after the serious flood damage we had last year, which we did, pleased to say. And then we planned to go to Myanmar, Burma, which has been a long ambition of mine in particular. So we planned a trip to go to Yangon, which was formerly Rangoon, and then get the train up to Mandalay, and then go to Bagan, and back to Rangoon, and then home, which we more or less did, except that when we were in Bagan, it all started to kick off a little bit, and we were thinking, now maybe we should be getting back to Thailand at least. So we cut the trip short by 2 weeks, and luckily for us, we changed our flights from a Sunday, which was 2 weeks ago, to the Friday, and we got back to Ubon without any problem. But the day after, on the Saturday, Air Asia, who were our airline who were taking us back to Bangkok, stopped all international flights. So we were lucky to sort of preempt it all, really, and get out of Myanmar. I must say Myanmar is a lovely country. I didn't fall in love with it, but it's very different. It's extremely poor.
Yeah.
There's lots to see, but you have to know where to go and look for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time sort of scratching our heads, wondering where to go. But once we made some contacts with taxi men and all that sort of stuff, we found it very interesting. But there was hardly any people there, and the store sellers were struggling like everybody else. You know, I mean, these people live from hand to mouth, but there was no hands. There was no tourists. It was just incredible. Anyway, we got back to Thailand 2 weeks ago today, and in the days after, my daughter was getting a little bit concerned. She kept sending me messages about what the government were doing with the lockdowns, and also a message from the Foreign Office to say that all British subjects should get back to England ASAP. So I was due to come back on the 1st of April. I got in touch with my airline and saw that the flight had been cancelled and put forward onto the 2nd of April, which wasn't too bad, except that my flight from Frankfurt to Manchester had been cancelled and there was no option of another flight. So I began to think, maybe. And then thinking about it a bit more, with possibility of airports closing and airlines reducing the flights, I thought the best thing to do was to just find another flight. Couldn't get in touch with Lufthansa. I put 500 baht, which is about £12.50, into my payphone, and phoned the Lufthansa office. After 15 minutes, the money ran out. So, you know, how much more money do you put into your phone to try and get in touch? So I gave up on that. Found a flight with Thai Airways from Bangkok to London, which I took at a huge expense, but at least I was getting home, and I knew that Lufthansa would reimburse me my flight with them, and at least I was getting home and not really worried about what Lufthansa were going to do, because I didn't want to get stuck in Germany if there was no flights to Manchester. So the flight from Heathrow to London was good, because at least it got me back in the UK, and I could figure out how to get from Heathrow to Manchester. And I flew back. British Airways had a flight from Heathrow to Manchester in the afternoon. So putting all of that together, leaving the house, at Ubon to getting home in Diggle took me 40 hours. And 9 of those hours were spent in Bangkok Airport, and 9 more hours were spent in Heathrow. Bangkok wasn't too bad, because restaurants and shops and everywhere were open. But in Heathrow, the only thing that was open was a Boots and a WH Smith's. No hot drinks, just sandwiches, and just waiting around. It was pretty bad. But at least I got home, and I thought I got home in the best way I could, without exposing myself to the tube in London and a train or a bus from London back to Manchester. And pleased to say, I'm proof here now, 7 days on, no symptoms. So okay, I got away with it. That's the story.
You were lucky to got back.
Yeah.
But Martin, you're just back as well, aren't you?
No, I didn't go.
You didn't go. You cancelled it, did you?
No. Yeah. Actually, probably about 3 or 4 days before we were due to go, we decided no, it's not a good move. So we did cancel, and of course, then about a week later, then things started to really ramp up to what they are now. I did actually contact Ray when he was over there, just to sort of get a lie of the land and what he was feeling about the situation, and he actually contacted a lot of people in Thailand, and in the early part, they were playing it down to a large extent, thinking no, it's all good here. But then over about a week or so, everyone sort of went, oh, no, maybe you shouldn't come. Things are changing quite rapidly.
Yeah. But Ray, you were talking about Germany. That's really peculiar when you look at their figures, because they've got over double the cases that we've got, but a quarter of the deaths. So they've got over twice as many cases as we've got, but a quarter of the deaths. That's really peculiar.
What I read, Ronnie, was that the Germans were recording it differently. Whereas we're recording it, the people die with coronavirus. They're saying people died of coronavirus.
Yeah.
So if you had an underlying thing, they don't count it. That's what I read anyway.
Yeah. The figures are still quite peculiar, aren't they, when you look at it?
No, I think the figures all over are peculiar.
Yeah, I think when this is all over, we'll see what really has happened. Anyway, let's get back to the meeting. We're doing April.
Ronnie, you've got Elizabeth Hallett's joined. She's muted out.
No, she isn't muted out this end. I've just checked. Again, as her end, she's muted out, not ours. So that I've just checked, so that's okay. So welcome, Elizabeth. I don't think you can talk to us, but welcome, Elizabeth. Hope you enjoy the meeting. So we're down to April. Did I? Yeah, that was Susan. Yeah, right. Are you now gone, Susan? Yeah, she's now gone. Right. We're now doing April.
Yep. I've got a sheet of A4 here, both sides for April.
Yeah, right. Can I just start it off, Keith, and then you can do it. I'm not doing a long thing. It's just really short. 1943. Sandakan to me is one of the things I hated doing. That was one thing that really did give me nightmares. The men from E-Force who had left Changi 28th of March in the SS De Klerk for Bahama Island near Sandakan Harbour were split up at Cochin. 500 Australians were sent to Sandakan. Other April arrivals at Sandakan were British from Yeselton, and in two parties, the fittest on the 8th and the next party on the 18th. This made a total of 776 British in Camp 2. Formosan guards started arriving at the camp, and the treatment from them was worse than the Japanese. The cage was set up. The cage was set up in the middle of the camp under a big tree. I have got a picture of the big tree somewhere. That was set up in the middle of the camp, facing the guard room. It was so small. The people who were the POWs who were put in the cage could only sit. They couldn't stand. And it had bars all the way around it, just high enough to sit in. In the first week of being caged, no food was given. So they went a week without any food. Exercise was at 5 p.m. So they're let out at 5 p.m., which always included beating from the guards. I did read somewhere that the cooks in the cookhouse used to put the scraps outside at 5 p.m. because they knew that's when the cage people were being taken out for exercise, and they put them outside, and the POWs used to fight the dogs for the food that was put outside. Horrible. Anyway, go on, Keith.
Okay, well, I won't run through them all because it's a list I had to do about 5 years ago for VJ 70. So we kick off with Singapore. 1942, 4th of April, Lieutenant Colonel Hugonin's party leave Changi, destination Saigon. It's the very first movement of POWs from Singapore. 1943.
Yeah, Barbara will agree with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And as we've talked about, they had that very cruel medical inspection before they were boarded, where they had to provide samples on the ends of glass
rods. Yep.
Yeah, most of them did that, didn't they, though, Keith? Yeah. Most of the hell ships, they did do glass rod. Horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, 1943, a little bit of a jump. Java Party 12 leaves Changi for Japan on the 2nd. 13th to the 17th, mixed Java parties leave Changi for Bampong in the Thai-Burma Railway. Here we go, here's the horror one. 18th to the 30th, F Force leave Changi, 7,000 men in 13 trains. And on the 25th, G Force leaves for Japan on the Kyoko Maru. So that's 1943. Just Singapore.
Was my father on that one, Keith? J-Force?
This is G-Force.
Oh, G.
G-Force, yep.
He was on G-Force.
Yep. In 1944, the Japanese planned to move all civilian internees from Changi Gaol to Sime Road. And all military personnel were to go into Changi Gaol or Changi Jail. So that's just some highlights I picked out, really just solely for Singapore. You did have other movements around the place, to be very honest. So I don't know really whether you want me to go through all of these. What other bits and pieces happened? Oh, yeah. The 5th to the 9th, 1942, the Japanese carrier fleet raided Ceylon. On the 5th, we lost 2 cruisers, HMS Dorsetshire and HMS Cornwall. And
it's 10:30.
On the 9th, HMS Hermes and her escort HMAS Vampire were again sunk by Japanese carrier-borne aircraft. On the 10th of April, the Bataan Death March starts. On the 18th of April, B-25 bombers attacked Tokyo. This was the Doolittle raid. I'm jumping a little bit here, so if anybody wants to ask any questions, please do. On the 18th of April 1943, Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, his aircraft he was traveling was shot down and killed by the Americans. On the 22nd of April 1943, the Japanese announced that captured Allied pilots would be given a one-way ticket to hell, unquote. 1st of April 1945, invasion of Okinawa. 7th of April 1945, B-29s, Super Fortresses, fly their first fighter escorted missions against Japan, escorted by P-51 Mustangs based on Iwo Jima. Right.
1944, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
1944, April, the Japanese were on the outskirts of India, and Mountbatten organised a last-ditch stand at Koima to stop the Japanese getting the railway. Because then they were in control of the railway from Bengal to Assam. So he did actually stop them getting to the railway. So that was, and I don't know if the figures are correct, but it's estimated of 50,000 Japanese men died at Koima.
Wouldn't surprise me.
50,000.
Not necessarily of battle wounds either, because they were starving.
Yeah, they were starving.
Live off the land, and there was nothing on the land to live off of.
Yeah.
That's right. Siege of Kohima started on the 4th and was lifted on the 18th.
Mm.
Yep.
Right. Anyone else got anything on April?
Right. I've just seen April the 29th, the Emperor's birthday.
Okay. Oh, we'll all stand up and clap and bow to that one.
I don't think.
No. Oh dear. I bet they had to though. I bet they were taken out and they all had to bow and do their thing. Yeah.
Yep, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
In actual fact, on the 27th of April 1946, the Major General that ordered the execution of 2 Australian and 2 British POWs for attempted escapes from Changi was himself executed on the same spot.
On the same spot, yeah. Yeah.
Quite a few things if you want those to be added. I've got all that Keith had said. It's interesting what some of the Americans called, well, what the Americans called some of their raids, because the one raid that you mentioned was called the Iceberg Raid, which was the Battle of Okinawa, where they called it Operation Iceberg. You know, so they've got some strange names for things.
We did pretty well as well.
Right, yes, that's probably true. And on the 29th of April 1942, the Japanese cut the Burma Road with the capture of Lashio in Burma. One very strange thing I came across was April 1943, on the 3rd of April, there were racial tensions between American Marines and New Zealand troops of Maori origin. It's something we don't perhaps always hear about, racial tensions.
Yeah,
those did crop up, and we couldn't have done without those.
They had general problems within the army in America, didn't they? They wouldn't let the can't call them dark anymore. You've got to call them black, haven't you? They wouldn't let the black troops into the same units as the white troops. That was very, very strange in America at that time.
Yeah.
Remember that the racial thing came after, when we were in the 60s. That's when it actually happened, when they recognised that they had rights. But before that, they had no rights.
Well, I used to get a magazine called After the Battle, and they were talking about the American troops over here. And the British public took great exception the way that the white Americans were treating the black American troops. To the point, in one pub in Hampshire, they were quite pointedly told, the white troops, if you cannot treat your fellow troops or as at least comrades and equals, please don't frequent our pub. Because we're not putting up with it. You know, you're expecting these men to go and die, and you're treating them like second-class soldiers.
Yeah, the problem is with that, though, Keith, that they were brought up that way. So that wasn't an individual thing. They were brought up, the race thing was there. Yeah. And that weren't till the 60s that we actually the world actually moved it, didn't they?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Because it was pretty bad over here, wasn't it, in the 60s?
Yeah, 70s. It was bad over here, yeah. But no, that's, I think a lot of it is upbringing. If you're brought up to hate something, that stays with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that, you know, but yeah, that wasn't very nice. When you read some of the things about what happened in the American troops, that wasn't, they didn't treat them right.
No.
I mean, the one who held the flag up, the American who held the flag up when they planted the flag. Yeah, Iwo Jima. He was black, wasn't he? And he ended up a drunk on the streets. Yeah, Ira Hayes. He ended up a drunk on the streets, didn't he?
I think he did. Yes.
He wasn't a national hero, and yet he did actually hold the flag up.
Yeah.
That's horrible. Anyway, yeah. So
can I say another thing that links back to your Bataan March? The 4th of April 1943. There was the only large-scale escape of Allied prisoners of war from the Japanese in the Pacific Islands, and 10 Americans and 2 Filipino convicts break out of the Davao penal colony on the Isle of Mindanao. And the escaped POWs were the first to bring news of the Bataan March and other atrocities committed by the Japanese to the world. So that was quite an interesting one. Right. Yeah. April 6, 1944, the Japanese drove onto the plain of Impal, and they were strong enough to surround the British forces at Impal and Kohima. And then 17th of April 1944, the Japanese launched Operation Ichigo. Now, I don't know if that's comical, but, whatever. Can't translate that one. With over 600,000 men. Where did they get all these soldiers? In central China. And that was to try and capture the area where the American bombers were held. Yep. And that was the first phase of the Battle of Central Henan. On the 24th of April 1944, British troops reopened the road from Impal to Kohima. So that's it. I have actually got other things from Europe which I thought might be interesting, or do you want to concentrate on Japan?
Should we get back? Yeah, should we get back to it?
We tend to forget about what's happening at home.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. Kevin, have you got anything?
Yeah, just go back to what Keith was on about there, the Indian Ocean raid by the Japanese. The whole idea was to destroy the British fleet in the Indian Ocean and also to facilitate the invasion into Burma. But it wasn't partially successful in the respect that, like he said, that they bombed Ceylon, and that forced the British to move the naval base from Ceylon, and they actually moved it to the close to Mombasa in Kenya. But part of that comes back to what me and Keith and Martin were on Facebook regarding the Bletchley Park and the code breaking of the Japanese. Well, the British would have had a listening station in Ceylon. And of course, I had one of them Alan Turing bombers in Ceylon as well, at least one, they might add more. And this was like the major listening station to try and break I had broke the Japanese codes, but they wanted to listen to the traffic that the Japanese were putting on. So all that would have had to be shipped out of Ceylon in case the Japanese actually invaded and captured it. So it would have been a major exercise to get that out of the way. That was regarding that. The other one I've got is, as you know, all the evacuation ships that left Singapore on the 13th of February while I sunk or captured. But there was one of the ships was carrying one of the senior naval officer. He was called Rear Admiral Spooner.
Yep.
And he was on the ship.
Motor Launch 310.
Yeah, 310. Yeah. Well, he was. Their ship was bombed, and they had to ditch it onto the island. And they were on this island for 2 months, and eventually 2 civilians sailed to Banker Island to ask for help because there was an outbreak of malaria on the island. And one of the other major or senior commanders was Air Vice Marshal Conway Pulford, and he actually died of malaria before anybody could get back. And they asked the Japanese to go back to the island and bring them back or rescue them. And they didn't seem to be that particularly bothered, but they did eventually go. But by that time, the Rear Admiral had died as well. And the rest of the people were captured, but they never took them back to Bank Island, and I don't know where they ended up at. But that was on the 9th of April, so they had been on this island for nearly 2 months.
Yeah, they were taking them from Banker Island to the mainland, weren't they?
Well, some were, but I think these men which were on this island, they did. I don't think they actually went back to Bank Island. Maybe they took them straight to Palembang. I don't know.
Yeah, I should think so. Yeah, because they were taking them all off, weren't they? So I should think they went straight to the mainland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would have thought.
You were talking about. I saw your pictures, and that reminded me the large on the FEPOW family from you and Martin. And that reminded me of the computers then. I mean, the computers, that was a whole room, wasn't it? That was a whole room. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But no, that was the start of it.
The bombs.
It's a lot of work went into that, though.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant.
What is it? As I said on the Facebook thing, actually, they've rebuilt one of them. And every now and again they run it just for like a demonstration, and the noise, the clacking noise.
Yeah.
That was one. If you can imagine a room full of them, and the noise would have been absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, but you think we just put on a spreadsheet and we do things on it, but in those days, whoever worked all that out was absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah,
that was. I mean, you look at it and you think, oh, that's really, clapped up stuff put together with bicycle chains and everything. But I mean, that was absolutely brilliant how they did it.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, I've got a picture. I'm in radio and television, and I've got a picture of the first TV. And we always say Baird made the first TV, but all Baird's was a slit. That was a slot. Have you ever heard of a zoetrope? It's got little holes and you spin it and you look through it. Well, that's how Baird's TV was. He had a little slit and you looked through the slit and he had a bicycle chain and everything. And that weren't a TV as we know it. And yet we always say Baird made the TV, but that's got to start somewhere, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. But like you say about we're talking about the Japanese code breaking. I always thought myself, it must have been virtually impossible. I mean, how many people spoke Japanese then? And all the symbols I have and all that. I thought it must have been incredible. But one of the guys who was working on the codes, he actually taught himself Japanese within about 4 weeks. It was unbelievable. But it made it easier actually for the British, because the Japanese couldn't send the actual symbols over the radio. They had to use numbers to represent the symbols. So when the British broke the code, what they did was they knew what the numbers meant, which symbol. So it was actually easier for them to do it. But these guys worked it out. I mean, they were absolutely brilliant people that did that. I thought of that and actually worked it out. But I broke the diplomatic codes in about 1934. So they were reading the Japanese diplomatic codes in 1934. So that's how good they were. They were absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Right, Martin, have you got anything? April?
April 42. That's when they transferred 10,000 POWs out of Changi to Sime Road to actually work on the building of the Shinto shrine. So that was a major undertaking for all the POWs out in that period. April 43 is the time when the railway was pushing through Whampoa, and all the rock work was being finished at North Whampoa, and of course a lot of the F Force were making their way up country. D Force were coming through at the same time, so it was mass migration up the railway. Outside of that, that's pretty much what I've got at the moment.
There are some fantastic sketches of Whampoa, the viaduct. Some fantastic ones. I mean, that must have took, unless they did it from memory, I don't know how, but there's a lot killed there as rock falls, wasn't there?
Well, I think that in all, I think during the construction of the viaduct, I think there's only 4 deaths.
Only 4?
And two of those were drownings.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember Rod was telling us that throughout the whole construction of the viaduct, over that 3-week period, there was only 4 deaths.
Yeah, because they did. I mean, the land wasn't there, was it? They had to blast the rock away to get the viaduct round.
On the actual ledge part, but there's Whampoa's quite a large section, and where the station is and Whampoa Central, there's probably 2 kilometres of flat ground there as well.
Yeah.
So when you go from Arrow Hill through the viaduct, then you go through Whampoa Central, and you get out to then North Whampoa, then you go back into the rock ledge again, which goes right up through Pukai and comes out at Wang Yai. But certainly a lot of rock work. But apparently apparently only four deaths in the actual period of the when the viaduct was
That's
built.
absolutely fantastic when you think of what they had to go through to do it. I mean, they said that the Japanese didn't always warn them when they were going to detonate.
That's right, and only well, the only recorded rock death that I'm aware of was Smith of the Beds and Hearts, who actually was deforced, and he was passing through, and they stopped in a banana plantation just to rest up, and as blasting took place, a rock hit him and killed him instantly.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I suppose that was the tap, what they call it, tap.
Hammer and tap. Yeah,
Hammer and
Well,
tap.
I think a lot of that area was dynamited and drilled and blasted. There's also stories of the guys hanging over the ledge from ropes and setting the charges and. Yeah, so it was amazing that the engineering behind it's incredible, because the Japanese were so prepared. They had all the timbers cut, ready to go. So that whole viaduct was assembled in 3 weeks. So that all the logistics that sat behind it, they did all the rock work. They prepared the ledge, and then of course set the concrete footings and foundations. And then stood the frame up, and all in a period of 3 weeks. Incredible.
Yeah. When you look at the sketches, it's absolutely fantastic. The construction, absolutely fantastic. But 4 deaths, that surprises me. It's
yes, well, it did me too. But when you look at the grave. Returns for the deaths in the area, there's actually very few.
Yeah, but Hintock was a lot more though.
Yes, further.
The same type of thing though, wasn't it? The same type of thing that Ham and Tap. That was the same.
Yeah, but it was that they're actually digging out. That's the rocky country. That's really going up into the hinterland then and through the real the hard rock area. And
how many deaths roughly were there then, Martin?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have those numbers, but certainly there was a great deal more in that area than there was in that sort of lower area up to Whampoa.
Yeah. I did actually find the sketches made of the cemeteries, so I did download a lot of them, and some of the cemeteries are really huge. I mean, they really are huge throughout the railway. But anyway, sorry, Ray, you were saying?
Martin, can I ask you a question? How much of the original framework and construction is still at Whampoa? Because
none of it.
The trains can run over it.
No, they took the whole thing down in 1948, and it was rebuilt. So it's actually there probably is some of those original timbers reconstructed into it, but primarily they recast all the concrete bases and upgraded it, because, as we know, the railway was never intended to be a permanent railway. It was a temporary railway just to try and get their ammunitions and troops through into Burma, and they were obviously working on building up the embankments through some of the timber bridges during 1945 and building concrete bridges in Burma. So their intent was to try and make it a more permanent railway. But in the first instance, in 1943, when it was finished, it was really only just finished, and it was pretty crude in its construction.
Right, Bernard.
Yeah.
I can see you dropping off, mate.
Oh, yeah, I know. I've been up early, Rob. Yeah.
No, Sophie, have you got anything about April?
No, not personally, but I was just sort of listening to the discussion there about the construction. Because obviously in my job, by training, I'm actually a geologist. Although I do work for a consulting engineering company, and we do a lot of construction in highways, railways, and things like that. And I just think about the amount of red tape, paperwork, testing, reporting, and everything we do, and the care that we have to, and all the meetings and everything that have, and I look at some of what was built there, and I was like, oh my God, there's no way that now, if if somebody came to our company and said, which is a worldwide company, and said, would you like to take on the design and construction of this? The answer would probably be no way ever, because it's just so there's the thought of doing rock cuttings and things now. It's just so that aspect of it interests me quite a lot, because I think the amount of controls and things that you have now on things like that, and building up just even an embankment is it's really sort of awe-inspiring what they did do, because that sort of thing now people would just shake their heads and say no, and that's even under the best of conditions. So I'd be really interested to see some of the sketches, because things like foundations, embankments, rock cuttings and things are all things that I might get involved in on a daily basis now. And I think obviously the link with my dad's side, that bit of it really is like, all the bad things aside, what they did is massively impressive, whether it was in Thailand or elsewhere, and in such a short time scale as well.
Yeah,
so
I think,
it's amazing.
I think that before the war we rejected it. We said we couldn't possibly do it.
Yeah.
And the Japanese, fortunately for them, had a workforce, because we said we wouldn't do it because the death rate would be too high, going through the jungles and everything. But the Japanese had a force they got from Singapore. So I mean, they were really laughing. They had a force to dispose of, didn't they? So, but the construction work. I mean, the Japanese are good at construction, aren't they? Yeah. I just go back to my trade, televisions. I mean, when I started, we were the chief with television, and the Japanese slowly got a hold and took over. Yeah. They're good. They're good at planning. They get on with it. We tend to take too much time and think of something out. Anyway, any more on the April?
Yep. Yeah,
just going back to Sophie, your interest there in the engineering. There's a file at Q in just 1 second. In where are we? WO208 289, which is railway installations, Burma Tail Railway location and installations, January 1945.
WO208.
It's WO208 2859, and pretty interesting file in terms of diagrams and drawings and dimensions for various installations on the railway.
Yeah, I like
from an engineering background, you'll probably find that very interesting.
That, yeah. Thank you for telling me about that.
Right, Barbara. Europe, go on.
Because
that was happening in Europe, so that's part of the war. So
Yeah, so it was just little things that I saw crop up, and I think for 1943 on the 30th, this is something, I think there was a film made about this, Operation Mincemeat.
Oh, yeah.
That's when Lieutenant Jules Crew released a body with false documentation on it near the Spanish coast.
The Man Who Never Was.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
right.
I knew there was a film. And I thought, well, that's just a little bit of interest and a side track to us. So that was quite interesting. So we all know the film about that. In 1944, on the 25th, George Patton, he had a bit of a controversial setback while giving a speech at the Welcome Centre in Knutsford in England, when he opined that the United States, Britain and the Soviet Union were destined to rule the post-war world. So whether he was right or wrong. Anyway, a reporter's story next day left out the Soviet Union, and the Kremlin were offended, and Patton was reprimanded by Eisenhower. On the 27th, I think this is something that we should remember. Slapton Sands, the tragedy there.
Yep.
Hundreds of American soldiers and sailors were killed over 2 days in the training exercise in preparation for the D-Day landings in Slapton. So let's remember them as well. And obviously, right up to the end of April, all the preparations were underway for D-Day. April the 10th, 1945, this is something, which comes up quite often for us, that Buchenwald, the concentration camp, was liberated by American forces who discovered all the horrors there. On the 12th of April, and I hadn't realised this, that President Franklin had died suddenly, and Harry S. Truman then became the president, so took over right at the end. 15th of April, again, something else that we recognise and remember in this country was that Bergen-Belsen was then liberated by the British Army, and they went in and found horrific things. There you go. You mentioned birthdays of the Emperor. Well, Hitler celebrated his 56th birthday on the 20th of April in the bunker in Berlin. And it was coming out that he was very unhealthy, nervous and depressed. I wonder why. And that's about it. Oh, Dachau. Dachau was liberated on the 29th of April. So it makes you realise how soon we were getting now towards Europe and Germany being defeated when we realise about those things taking part. Oh, and on the 29th, Hitler married his companion, Eva Braun. And then the next day they committed suicide. Well done, Hitler. Okay. Yeah. So that was about it for April.
Tim, I can't see Tim.
Huh? I'm here somewhere.
Yeah, I can't see. I can see you now. Have you got anything for the 6th?
No, I don't think I've got anything for April at all, really.
Oh,
except
yeah.
Birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday.
I think the screen gets into overload. There's so many people.
Yeah, we have got a lot today, but it is nice to have more. I mean, we sometimes we've only had 3 or 4, but that is nice to have. You get more of a breadth of information, don't you? You get more information, but that has been good. We're now up to 11. Are you okay, Matt? Oh, have a look. We'll see if we've got. Yeah. Are you? We can't hear you, Matt. Can you? No, we can't hear Matt. Right. It's 11 o'clock. It has been, to be honest, it's been a really good meeting. I've enjoyed it. So it's been really good. We've got a lot of information there. Is there anything else anyone wants to add before we close the meeting?
Yeah, could I go back to Keith mentioned the F Force going on the Tyburn Railway. Well, as you know, I've done some research on my dad's company, and there was 4 of them in F Force, and 3 of them died. Does anybody know why F Force was particularly bad for high casualty risk? Or?
Well, before they actually went, they were the sick. so they weren't very well before they went up there. But the Japanese wanted the workforce, so they actually sent the sick up there, and a lot of it was marching, so they had to walk a long way.
200 miles.
Yeah, and they were sick. I mean, when a fit person walking 200 odd mile is going to feel it, let alone a sick. And they had to go through camps that had cholera. Yeah. So there was a lot of illness about, and they picked that up as they went up there. So, and the work they were given when they actually got there, Suncure, wasn't that wasn't good work. And then after a lot of them got ill at Suncure, and they actually sent them up further up Burma to the hospitals, and a lot of them died there. So that when you look at the figures of Suncure, that isn't the whole story. You've got to look at the hospital they were sent to.
Which would be probably Tambaya.
Yeah, Tambaya. It's F Force and H Force. F Force tended to get the worst of it than H Force, but when you look at the figures, it's. But that's the main reason. I think a lot of them were ill. You know, they were the ill. The Japanese demanded they wanted more, and they had to send the ones who were sick. So a lot of them were taken straight out of hospital. And you take straight out of hospital having to walk that far. If you want to read a good book on F Force, I keep saying it, John Coast. Read his book. Brilliant book. I mean, when you read his book, you'll understand what they went through. But that is a very good book. Anyway, it's been a really good meeting. I think we'll end it there because we'll end it on a high. That has been very good. This month's book is going to be The Walkers. I haven't got it on hand at the moment. Just a minute.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, to war with the Walkers.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Matt.
Oh, thank God for that. I thought I was going mad. That's your word.
Well, we couldn't hear you at the beginning. So we've got To War with the Walkers, Annabelle Venning. And we have some people, Martin, have asked if they could send their books back when they've read them. So your book is come back. They've read it and they've sent it back. So we've got your book again to go out, which is good. So I think what we ought to say is if anyone has got any spare books, send them to me and then I'll add them into... I've got 3 Kinkasakis. So 2 of them will go in the drawer. But we've also got 2 sent by, let me get them and I can tell you what I've got. We've got Echoes of Captivity by Louise Reynolds.
Yep.
When she edited it, she edited it. What she did is she did interviews. She did one with me. She did one with Jan. So they're all interviews. She did one with Sec. So they're all interviews and she's edited them and put them in a book. That's good. We've got Conjure of the Kwai. These are from Pen and Sword. And then we've got Ellie Taylor's Face, Hoop and Rice. We've got Martin's back, so we've got Martin's, and it's in good condition, Martin. To be honest, it looks brand new, but yours will go out again, Martin. Okay?
Okay.
So yours will go out again, and then we've got To War with the Walkers. So what I'd say, if anyone's listened to this who isn't at the meeting, and they've had a book or they've got a book and they've read it and they don't want it anymore, please send it to us, and we can put it out in the drawer. The drawer actually is going quite well. We've got about, I think it's about 88 members. We could do with about 100, but we've got 88. It's okay. We're money-wise, we're just about there. So I've got 2 Kinkasakis. I've also got, which Ray will like, we've got Twilight.
Yeah. Sinister Twilight. Yeah, Noel Barber. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll like that because you knew him, didn't you, Ray?
Well, my good friend Jane is her. Noel Barber is her half brother, and his other brother was Anthony Barber, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer in the Heath government.
Yeah.
He was a Spitfire pilot and was shot down over France, by the way, and ended up as a prisoner of war in Germany.
Well, I've got one of them. So we've got the Noel Barber one. That is really a good read. I thought that was a terrific read. And the other book I've got, which I aren't putting in it, of course, was her at Tanamara.
Yeah, Tanamara.
Yeah, Tanamara. So I've got that one as well, which again, if anyone wants a good book to read, Noel Barber did those 2, and they are really, really good. So that they're good. So we've got, at the moment, I've got 6 books. I've got 8 books. So we've got enough for the rest of the year, Matt. So we have got, we are okay for now. And with everything that's going on, it's best to leave it like this. So I just do them from this end.
Yeah,
and
that's fine.
not use yours. We'll just use mine. So we're okay for this year. So we've got a load of good books. I don't think there's anything more to add. It's just been a good meeting. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and hope you all have. And please, let's see as many if we can. This has been a good meeting because we've had a good, otherwise I feel myself talking too much.
Like yesterday.
Yeah. I had a good chat, mate. And it made a lot of sense to me. I sat here and I thought, this is peculiar. There's no one turned up. I got to 5 past and I went to turn my computer on because I was on my other computer. I went to turn it off and I noticed the 4th. And I thought, my computer's wrong. And I thought, I'll just have a look at the date and realise that was Saturday. Honestly, the days, they just roll into one because we've been at home for so long, isn't it? And they just roll into one. If any of you can make it tomorrow, it's a general chat, so we can have a general chat about whatever's going on in the world, whatever. I don't mind what we talk about tomorrow. So tomorrow, general chat at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that's UK time, Martin, if you want to join. It's just a general chat for the people that are at home and they're self-isolated, and maybe some of them ain't got anyone to talk to. So this is going to happen every Monday at 10 o'clock. Okay?
How did we get on that, Ron?
So the same thing. I did send out invites, so you did have an invite, but you can use the same thing as you used today, and that'll get you into the meeting tomorrow at 10.
I'll try.
Okay? Yeah. So just that'd be nice if we have a few turn up so we can have just a general chat. Okay? I'll turn the record off.
Yep.